Yeah, so it's great to be here today. Great to meet you guys. Thank you so much, Felicia and Utah Global Diplomacy, for having me. I help people get people to your events. And so a successful event really starts with understanding your audience and what their values are and what they believe and what they think. And so this presentation is going to cover two things. It's going to cover both your audience's values and how to align with them, as well as just a toolkit of things you can use in order to get people there. So processes, tips, tricks, things that you should know about successfully getting people to an event. So first off, a little bit about me. I have kind of a varied background. I've always been interested in the arts. I did ballet for 14 years, and then I did half of a fashion design degree, and then half of an art degree, and then at one point I finally realized, I don't want to be covered in paint and charcoal the rest of my life. And Westminster College, or it's Westminster University now, they had an arts administration degree, and I loved just the puzzle pieces and like putting everything together. And I got into marketing that way. And I've had a couple of different jobs, kind of more or less in marketing, events, that kind of thing. I've worked at an agency. I've worked for the Utah State Senate. I worked for Utah Opera and Utah Symphony for 5 years, and so I have a lot of experience with that. And then I struck out on my own 2 years ago. I struck out on my own 2 years ago, and I started my agency. It's called the Charrette. And a charrette, to give you some context about that, you see it a lot in like engineering and architecture, but it comes from a time in, 18th and 17th century France, where they would have the academies of art. And so you'd go to as a student, you'd learn art, and then you would have a lot of your other artists, so different disciplines coming in, collaborating with you. So you might have a poet commenting on the aesthetics of a sculpture and vice versa. And so it was a very collaborative process. And that's what I strive to do, is to come in there and to help you and to help your organization and really collaborate with you to have a successful event. And so I primarily work with small arts organizations, lots of nonprofits, and we do this in two ways. We automate a lot of your marketing processes, so a lot of automated emails, automated ads, all of that. And we also help you define a good story to tell with your content marketing. And also, let's see. So this is Jefferson. You guys probably have seen him. He's my service dog. And one, I'm sharing this with you because I love sharing pictures of my dog. But then two, I always get the question, can we pet him? Go ahead and pet him if he has his vest removed. If he's still wearing his service vest, he's still working. But he does love the attention, so no worries. So before we start actually talking about events, I wanted to talk to you about, one of my other loves, which is fashion and fashion history. I wanted to talk to you about the Birkin bag. So does anyone here know what a Birkin bag is? Okay, we're just getting a couple of hands here. So it's a really interesting, there we go. So it has a really interesting storied history. So they started in, 1837 by Thierry Hermès, who was a leather worker. He mostly did things with like saddles, luggage, kind of larger leather goods. But over the years, they narrowed down and started doing bags, small leather goods, accessories, all of that. And they've perfected, like, they're so interesting, their story, the history of them, that they perfected, like, certain stitches for leather work. They had customers from everyone from Napoleon Bonaparte, obviously when they first started, he's not buying anything now, to the Kardashians. And so there's a lot of people who are very interested, and it's a very competitive market. And the other things that are interesting about them is that they have, very strict control methods. They only make a certain number of Birkin bags per year. They are all unique. They are all hand done. It takes years to learn how to make them, and it takes months to actually physically make one of these bags. And they can cost anywhere between $14,000 to possibly about $500,000. The only prices I could find were used, and that's like $300,000, which is the most expensive one. and they will burn them before a flawed one ever sees the light of day. So it makes you wonder, like, why on earth would anyone ever buy this, especially when a bag can cost as much as like a nice, condo or something. But the thing is that they actually really understand who their customer is. Now, this is Axel Dumas, who is the current CEO of the company. And one of the things he likes to say is that they don't sell bags, they don't sell accessories, they don't sell these things, they sell time. And so obviously, when you are in this level of someone who's buying luxury fashion goods, obviously you have a lot of money, you like the exclusivity, the uniqueness, all of that. But what sets them apart is this concept of time and what the bag encapsulates and what it symbolizes. It symbolizes the number of hours used to actually make the bag, the years that craftsperson took to actually learn how to make it, the timelessness of the bag. I mean, the bag is never going to go out of style. And also just the years that the company has been in operation. The bag is not just a bag, it is time. And they really understand that their customer values that. They value the time about that bag. And so, how does this actually bring us to marketing for your events and all of that? My notes here. What it really comes down to is, kind of the basic things that you're not supposed to talk about in polite company, religion, sports, politics. And if you think about those things, why do people go to a church? Why do people go see their favorite team? Why do people go to political rallies? It's not necessarily the thing that's there. It's not necessarily the specific church or the specific team or anything like that. It's what it symbolizes. It's the community. It's the psychic benefits. It's being seen somewhere like that. It's the exploration of new ideas. And so really, when you're thinking about your event, always start at this basic level of what is it that your attendees really, truly value. And so it takes me to kind of this first set of, this first part of the presentation, values, preparation, all of this. So I wanted to bring up a quote by Ruth Hart. So she is a business consultant for nonprofit organizations. She works with a lot of symphony orchestras, lots of opera companies. And she said something really interesting on her LinkedIn recently. So the Wallace Foundation, they are a foundation that does a lot of research into the arts, cultural institutions, all of that. And they just wrapped a study about building audiences and making sustainable audiences for these big arts institutions. And so they spent 5 years and $52 million. That's, I don't know how many Birkin bags that is. But they really didn't find anything. And so they couldn't think of any new ideas on how to build audiences. And Ruth here, you should follow her. She has a blog and a company called Culture for Hire. She has great insights on this stuff. But one of the things she said is, really no one should be surprised about this because they were looking at things like age, geography, race, frequency of attendance. None of these things actually tell you anything about consumer behavior and why people go to events. You can look at anyone from the same socioeconomic standpoint and wonder why some of them go to events and some of them don't. This demographic information, I'm not saying it's not important. Obviously, we'll add some context to, other things about your audience, but it is not the only thing you should be focusing on. So instead, there are a couple of questions that you should be asking. And I have a couple of examples here. So, first one, where are they hanging out? How do they get their information? And of course, this is kind of where demographics can help color that a little bit and help you give some more nuance. But one example of mine, when I was working for Utah Symphony and Utah Opera, we noticed, this is usually a slightly older audience, people who have the time and the money to, drop some money on a 12 concert series and go to that. But we had noticed that anytime we had a radio ad drop or a postcard drop, that all of a sudden ticket sales would spike. And that was not for nothing. This was an audience that they really, that's where they got the majority of their information. Consider what is your competition and what are your audience's limitations. Now, competition is not always other businesses doing the same thing. Sometimes it is what is taking up your audience's time. And one example that I had found, I was sitting in a focus group for the symphony. This was a couple years ago, where they were talking to some people and they're asking, what are some of your limitations to coming? And a lot of them were saying, well, I'm going to come downtown and I have to pay a babysitter and I have to pay for parking and, my kids have homework and I don't know who's going to get that done if we're not there and, we're going to buy dinner and all of this. And so there are all these things vying for their time. It can be anything from, the fact that they have 3 media subscriptions to Netflix and Spotify and all that, and they just really can't spend money on other things. But really understanding that can help you come up with creative solutions. So for the example of the symphony, one of the things that we ended up doing while we were there was we had a family pass, at least for a short period of time, where you could bring your kids and you added your kids onto your ticket for $5 a kid. And that solved that problem. And it's also really important to understand, how much information do these people need? Sometimes there needs to be a little bit more hand-holding. It goes beyond selling basically any e-commerce product. I mean, sometimes you do have to explain that product a little bit, but usually selling some lipstick is a lot more straightforward than getting someone to Shostakovich's 8th Symphony. And that might require a little more hand-holding. And so, they're not thinking about you nearly as much as you are thinking about them. And you need to remind them, and you need to show them why this matters to them, or understand why things matter to them, and explain that to them. It should. Let's see. There we go. There's also a little bit of data that you should have. So I once was on a discovery call with someone who was creating they did an event. It was a marketing event for their company, and every year they did the same thing, and they've done this for a couple of years, where they basically got everyone in the company to go out, reach out to every single one of their LinkedIn contacts, send them a private message, and tell them to come to this thing. And then what would happen is the event would come, it would be completely underwhelming, only half the seats were filled, and then they would sit there and they'd wonder, well, why didn't people come? We told everyone that we needed to. That they needed to, but the thing is that they only reached out in one way and they only reached out one time. People don't always remember what it is you're doing, and they're busy people. They don't always put it on the calendar, they don't always do that, but reminding them and giving them extra contact. And the numbers that I have here are basically how many times they about roughly need to be contacted in order for them to convert and to go and buy a ticket. And so obviously people who have come to your events before, those are going to be your most valuable people. They're more likely to come back. People who are just you're not in their orbit, it's going to take, quite a while. And so obviously you want to be working with each one of these people, each grouping of these people, your former people who are kind of looking for you, and then the people who just, they're a new audience. The next thing that you really want to work on is making sure that that is correct, your message and who you are. So obviously, if you're here at a Utah Global Diplomacy event, the majority of you are working with mission-based organizations. And so you probably already have a lot of this stuff written down, but the thing is a lot of times we want to do a really fun event, and so we keep adding things to it, and then we forget what our mission and our values are, and we forget, oh, hold on a second, this has absolutely nothing to do with what we are in business to do, with what our nonprofit or anything like that is doing. And so to actually go back to these, what do you do, why do you do it, what is it that you value? Because the thing is, if you value certain things, you're going to find people who also align with those values. And always understand what actually resonates with them. And this is one of my current clients. So Assembly Makerspace, they are a makerspace. So they are a warehouse that has everything from woodworking tools to lasers to 3D printers to sewing machines, a big warehouse in Austin, Texas. And they are really remarkable. So they have this great volunteer program. They have this great, people really pitch in. There's a huge community there, and they were kind of lagging in memberships. And in an effort to help more people understand why it is that they want to be a part of this great organization that has a great community. We started sending out emails really emphasizing the community aspect. And they have this thing coming up called the Maker Showcase. And the Maker Showcase is basically if you are a member of the organization, if you have a subscription to the organization, you just come in there, you can schedule about 25 hours worth of time per, I believe, week it is. And if you're a member, they also are allowing you to showcase some of your work there. And we sent out an email explaining like, hey, this is a big community. If you come to this thing, you're going to make friends. Also, you get to meet other people in the community. And if you're a maker, you get to showcase. And as soon as we sent that out, within an hour, the executive director got back to me. And she said, wow, we had 4 inquiries about showing their work in here. And then all of a sudden, there were people, emailing in and coming and wanting to, come to this event. There we go. And finally, before you actually get started on any of the practical aspects of marketing an event, it's important to envision what this looks like. So imagine you're at home, you've taken a shower, you're getting ready for bed, it is the end of this event. How was it that you felt? How was it that your audience felt? What are they saying about you? And how is it that you're going to get them back to your next one? Because if there's anything I want you to take away from this presentation is that people do not remember the details of any event. They really just do not remember anything from it. But they do remember how they feel. My marketing assistant, she was actually telling me a story about when she went to a Coldplay concert. She doesn't even really like Coldplay, but she went to a concert, a friend had a ticket, and so she went. And while she was there, they started throwing bracelets off of the stage, and then everyone was putting on these bracelets, and everyone was dancing together, and everyone was singing together. And she felt like she was really a part of something, and it was really exciting for her. And even though she doesn't like Coldplay, she still has this bracelet at her house, and she remembers the feeling. And she actually went back to another concert because she was able to take something away from it that represented how she felt. And everything that we just talked about in this last section about values, about planning, about your mission, this should really inform everything that you do in your marketing. And so this is a more practical side of this presentation of how do we prepare this marketing and how do we deliver it. Obviously, there are a couple of considerations. Consider what is your programming? Is it just one event and then a couple of things around the event? Is it a showing? Is it a gallery? All of that. And I mean, so that's kind of the more simple side of it. But also consider how does each of these elements meet and align with the value of the people who are coming here. The second part of this is keep some really close notes about what it is precisely that people need to know about this. Because I think sometimes we tend to forget, okay, we've told people about this a great event, but we forgot to tell them what time it is or where to park or those kinds of things. So it's really good to make sure you have those all noted. And this is one thing that I do for clients periodically is I have, let's see. There we go. I have a master copy document. And this master copy document, it has everything that you need in it. And so before we even start announcing things, we make sure that we have all the copy in one place. So if we need to make a social media post or an event or anything like that on social media, that we can just pull the copy, plop it in somewhere, and make edits as necessary to this event. Also, I'm just realizing none of my graphics came through, so this is very much a do as I say, not as I do. Test things before your events. Also, for those of you taking notes and photos and everything, I can send the slides to you with the pretty graphics in it afterwards. There's a QR code at the end. But anyways, so as you're considering and preparing this marketing, one thing to do is consider the marketing funnel. How do people get there? If it is really early, if this is your first event ever, you do have to put in a lot more work. But once you put in that work and you start to create some of the processes, it gets a little bit easier. So here's an example. This is a graphic, which again, if you if you use the QR code at the end, it's going to look much nicer. But basically, it's a kind of an educational graphic of like, how do we get people from one side of things to another? And so it starts out with, people who are just one-time ticket buyers. They buy one ticket to one event, and, they might come back, they might never come back. But what is it that you need them to do, and how do you need to reach out to them to make them a multi-ticket buyer? And then what do you need to do to make them a subscriber? So planning out those things, getting an idea of how are we going to get people from, very low engagement to really high engagements. Okay, yeah, so this is one of my clients. So they are the Unspeakeasy. They're kind of, how to put it, sometimes people go to these events and they're just like, I don't know how to describe this. But the best way I can describe it is that this is an organization for women who they care about intellectual pursuits, they care about politics, they care about talking about things, but they want to be able to talk about these things and workshop them in a very, in kind of a private way before they kind of build the strength to go out and talk about them even more. And this is an example of how I was able to create a funnel for them. So we set up a lot of email automations, because otherwise, when I first started working with Megan, the founder, she was basically just emailing every single person every single time that they inquired about their online community, about their retreats, about their courses. And we set up an email automation. So basically people, they join the email list and then they get about 5 emails. One of them's a survey of like, hey, why did you join our email list, which got us a little bit more data on them. But but basically, the idea of that was to tell them, like, okay, these are the things we do. Here are our offerings. If you want to apply to go to one of these retreats, this is how you need to do it. And it sent them through that. And we actually started to get quite a few people, interested in the community through that. Later on, what we ended up doing is we started doing an application series and an approval series and a sunset series is what I like to call it, where basically they haven't engaged with us for about 2 months, and then we send them an email saying like, hey, we'd love to have you back. But also, and then sending another one and saying, hey, we don't want to bother you too much, but if you're interested, here's a coupon. And then we send another one with an even better deal. And then we just say, hey, if you're not interested, that's okay. We'll just, we won't bug you from now on. And then we archive them. So we have a better idea of who our big engagers are, how many resources we can actually spend on them, and who's just not engaging. And you're probably wondering a little bit about email automation. So these are actually a couple of tools that I really like. They are all for different things, kind of depending on what your needs are. There are a couple of CRMs, so client relationship management systems, that these are 2, so Tessitura and Neon are 2 that are very specific to arts organizations that have volunteers, donors, that kind of thing. But if you can't really spend the money on like a really fancy system, I think having something like Salesforce or even just your email marketing platform can be a really good thing. So after this, one of the things you need to do is to start planning out your content. So that means, so planning out your content. What is it that people need to know? Like, when are they going to get an announcement? All of that. And also really consider like what your storylines are while you're doing this. But, what happens after the announcement? Do you withhold some information in order to have a reason to go bug them about your event, which I highly recommend doing? And then also, how are you going to follow up? What kind of PR things are you going to do? Are you going to pitch a news story to a news organization? Are you going to try and get on a podcast? And then start plugging those ones in. And then, of course, you don't want to forget, there were a lot of great things like Andrew had said about stories, Jeremy had said about stories. You want to really consider what stories are going to resonate with your audience. And so I like to think of it the same way that a news company, a news or a media organization would do this, is what are the elements of a good news story? Now, it depends on which, scholar you ask about it. Sometimes there are 12 points, sometimes there are 5, sometimes there are 7. But here are some really good ones: timeless, proximity, importance, interest, conflict or controversy. The reason why any of us watch reality television, sensationalism, prominence, and novelty, and just kind of oddity. And think about if someone is reading a story or if they are looking at a social media post, which of these elements really stick out to them? One part that is so important that I think that people forget about is to actually walk through, and this is very much the literal putting yourself in your audience's shoes and walk through their journey. So there's a virtual walkthrough that I think everyone should do. Like, obviously, test to make sure you can buy a ticket, test your coupons, test your email automations, test everything, test every single link. And kind of see if there's anything frustrating. So Assembly, this was actually one of my clients again, we had noticed at one point that people were very confused about making an account with them because they needed to make an account to do anything else. But the thing that they had been doing, so Neon, one of the CRMs that they had been using, they put this language of you need to create a Neon account, a Neon account, a Neon account everywhere on the website. And so everyone's like, why do I have to create a Neon account? I just want to create an account with you. Well, we went in there and we looked and we realized that Neon is completely white labeled. There is nothing that says Neon. It is not branded as Neon on anything on the patron side of it. And so we decided, okay, we're going to need to actually take that language off of the website. And so that's one of those things. When you start doing that walkthrough, you start to realize, oh, I am seeing things that they don't, and they're never going to see. And of course, you need to do a physical walkthrough. If you have a chance, I know this isn't always the case. I mean, say if you're like a touring band or something, you don't always get to do a physical walkthrough of the space. But if you're able to send someone, take some photos, take video, do anything you can, park where you think people are going to be parking. If the door is hard to find, like if it's going to be one of those things that people are going to drive around the block 10 times before they finally just go home, try and figure out what those things are. And put yourself in the space. And I mean, who here has been to an event where you have the check-in table or you give your ticket and then all of a sudden they have the bar right behind that and then there is just, everyone is there and you're trying to walk through it, but you can't, right? Okay, yeah, no, like we've seen a lot of events like that. So that's why a physical walkthrough is so important to this. And then, of course, the events. You finally did it. Your hard work paid off. People showed up. But your job is not over. So this is where you do need to think about. And obviously, when you're thinking about your content calendar, this is where you really need to consider, what is it that I need at the event? What kinds of photos? What kind of people are going to be there? I'm not sure if anyone here knows who Austin Diamond is. He's a local photographer. He's really great. A lot of the arts organizations hire him because he does such good photos of events. And one of the things that he has done in the past was he has actually hired models to come and to be the models for that thing. And it ends up creating really, really good photos. And so sometimes you need to pinpoint who are the people that I can let in for free, who I can take photos of, what's going on there, what story do we need to be telling of all these things. And to know how to follow up with people through that. And of course, remember to follow up with people. People, again, they're going to go home and they're going to forget everything that happened there. They are going to they're going to remember how they felt. And then sometimes you have to go back and you have to remind them of how great that was. Send photos, send a review, send a request to give them a review, anything along those lines. And really just keep those good times rolling with them. And, I hope that, there's a certain amount of empathy and sympathy that comes with, and especially with all these mission-based organizations that I'm sure, you guys have been involved with over the years. There's a certain amount of empathy that I think we have in this, in this space here for people who are coming. And I hope that this presentation was something that can really help you develop that empathy, to help you develop that ability to see things from their perspective and really create amazing events. And really help them, remind them of how it is they feel and how this helps them and really aligns with their values. And it's been so great to be here. My information is there. The black QR code will give you the slides if you want them, and then the blue QR code, I'd love it if you connected with me on LinkedIn.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, because we've been talking about it all day, is this development of audience. Figure out who your audience is. And I know that I am equally as guilty to say, well, who's your target audience? And we answer, well, everybody. I want everybody to be there. That's just not realistic. Can you talk through maybe the psychology of some of the different audiences and what that would look like in terms of marketing outreach? So, one of the big populations that I'm hearing of lately is, how do we get younger people to our events? What does that psychology look like to get younger people's attention to what it is that you're doing?
Right. Oh. Yes. Okay. Oh, right. That's a good question. I think it's a question that everyone in this space is really dealing with right now. And I can't say that there's like one definitive answer about how you can do this, because I think some people are very quick to say, oh, you just need to use TikTok or social media, or do the things where all the young people are. But it really goes a lot deeper of, what is it that young people are dealing with right now? And I think this is a common theme that I hear about it when I talk to young people, when I work with organizations that are trying to get more young people, is that it's not about like the youthfulness of the approach, it's about how they feel. And this is a group of people, younger people I've noticed, are very, very, very in tune with how they feel about things. And it's a matter of finding what matters to them, what matters to you, and finding some alignment within that. For example, again, with the young people, we're hearing like record numbers of young adults saying that they are lonely. And I think with that, you can tell a lot of really good stories. You can have a lot of really good messaging that actually helps them solve that problem. That's kind of all business is, whether you're nonprofit or for-profit or anything else, is that you are trading money for solutions. And for many people, the reason why they are going to an event is that it is a solution for things like their loneliness, or wanting to feel a part of a community, or wanting to explore new ideas. And so I think that comes down to, if you have an audience, and you're trying to develop that audience to really figure out what matters to them, whether it is through a survey, whether or not you were just picking up the phone and calling people and asking them what matters to them, and figuring out what the solution to that issue is. Yeah.
Excellent. One of the things that I haven't heard of today is the value of partnerships, and especially as it relates to being able to create an event, host an event, outreach about something that you're doing. Can you just talk through that idea of partnerships? Is it valuable? Is it not valuable? If it is valuable, how would you move forward with that in identifying who are the right organizations, individuals, or entities to come in those partnerships?
Do you hear this? Okay. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to, the classic thing where they say, if you want to get somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to actually just like legitimately get there, like go with other people, right? And enjoy the journey with it. And this is something that I dropped from my notes. I was going to talk a little bit more about it, but I'm glad you brought it up, is the importance of having some community partners. Here's the thing, is that at the end of the day, people like to sell social media as this, cure-all for all of our problems in marketing and email marketing and all of that. But in reality, it's communities and that face-to-face interaction that actually matters. And so one thing that I always recommend is, let's pinpoint with my clients and who else, like who is it that we can pinpoint in the community, whether it is a content creator or a local coffee shop or something, who wants to collaborate with you on this. And the thing is that it's kind of that snowball effect. You start getting the snowball going down the hill, and then it starts to get a little bit more, a little more speed and more volume and everything. And once you start working together and gathering all that snow up, then you actually have something that's big and impactful. So really pinpoint who it is in your community who aligns with your values, who aligns with your mission, and who really does want to be a part of that, because it also benefits them. Even if they're just like a for-profit company, like they do actually kind of enjoy being a part of something that matters.
You had discussed competition, which we actually haven't talked about at all today, and I will always die on this hill that at the end of the day, nonprofits, we're all businesses. Just being a nonprofit is a tax status, right? And for-profit businesses do this all the time. They do that market research to say who is doing something similar in my field and what are they doing well. I mean, they do SWOT analysis, essentially. Can you just talk through what does that market research look like in terms of seeing what our competitors are doing? How does that relate to increasing event attendance?
Right. I think, I think one thing that I would bring out of that is, look at what your competition is. It's not always what you think it is. To say that a symphony orchestra is competing with Spotify, that doesn't seem like it would be the same thing, but they absolutely are competing with each other. But, it's also a good thing to have a little bit of that competition, because then you can look to the left, look to the right, see what's going on, and see what it is that your competition is not doing. And really analyze what is it that I can do that will, meet the needs of my audience. What can I do that will meet the needs of my audience that, that Spotify can't give them? If I am like a chamber music organization, obviously Spotify can't give them an in-person interaction. They can't hear the acoustics in the room, but they can, basically the only need that that's meeting is the need to listen to music. I think, as far as that kind of research of what are you doing with, what are all of these other, competitive organizations, keep your mind open, because maybe you are a performing arts organization, but there's also a boutique that's doing some really cool things. And of course, you're kind of competing for the same dollars, you're competing for the same attention, but figure out what organizations that you like, if it's Nike, if it's a coffee shop or anything that you think are doing really cool things, and figure out how you can meet some of those needs if your values align.
Great. And any questions from the audience? No. All right. So I'm just going to ask one final question, and that is, we know what the best practices are. We know, it's email, it's social media, it's, partnerships. But if you were to look into a crystal ball, what are you seeing in terms of maybe some new trends that are coming up with marketing? How do we do essentially what this symposium is all about, and that is cut through the noise and get ahead of the game so that we can be on top of those trends?
So I'm probably showing a little bit of my bias here. But every time I go into LinkedIn, I see another person hawking their online course, and there are all these kind of newer business models that are very based on the digital economy and everything. And I think, obviously be aware of what are some of those things that are just so common and happening so much, and what is it that you offer outside of that. And again, kind of showing my bias here, especially post-pandemic, we have a lot of people who they don't know how to be around people anymore, but they want to be around people. We're seeing fewer people get married or form really good friendships and everything like that. And I think what a lot of people want right now is not what's on their screen. They want what's outside of their screen, and they want to actually connect with people. And so I think anytime you can do some kind of marketing that involves getting people to talk to each other face to face, or even, just the final product of an event of getting people to talk together face to face, that's going to stick out from all of these other digital products, from all this e-commerce, from all this stuff that I can buy or get or obtain without leaving my house.
Okay, fantastic. All right, any final questions? No, we're definitely to the, do we have a final question? Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
My question is that, basically.
Here. Thank you. Sorry, I'm so deaf in one ear, so.
I actually have a problem. Sorry. Okay. I have a problem with not simplifying, because you were mentioning about the audience and putting yourself in their shoes. I don't know, for me, when I'm doing a project, either for work or for my program, it's I would, not always, but most of the time, I would need someone to read my project and then say that, why are you saying that? I would say, duh, it's so obvious because of this. And the thing is that I'm not really that smart, or I don't know, people are not that stupid. I don't mean that. But maybe I am just the most stupid person. But the thing is, that I don't know, sometimes, most of the time, I don't know what I already know, because the audience, for example, the people who are coming here, you actually have to put yourself in our shoes so that you provide everything. But what if you are like, I don't know what they want, because I already know this place, I already know the facilities, so I don't know how to provide the facility for the participants or for the readers.
Right. So I think a lot of that goes back to really knowing what your mission is, and understanding, when you create like a mission and vision statement and everything, you don't have 6 missions, you have 1 mission. You have one thing that you were set out there to accomplish. And anything outside of that is just gravy. Like, it's good stuff, it's a cool bonus, but it's not what you're doing. And I think, in addition to making sure you have other eyes on this, especially eyes that don't know anything about what it is that you do, really go back through your work, your project, whatever your, foundational documents, all of that. And if it is not something that you either can deliver on, or, it's too much to try and deliver on it, then just like pull it from there. Because the thing is that people show up at things and they don't know what they don't know, and they're never going to know what it is that they don't know. And you can pull actually a lot of content and a lot of like these little side projects and side things, because the thing is, it's not going to make much of a difference to them. What's going to make a difference to them, again, kind of going back to this, is how they felt at the event, and considering what it is that people feel from your marketing, what people feel from your event, what people feel from your product. Anything else that's not going to help them in that goal and in that mission of getting them to feel something, then you don't really need to do it. And I know, like with nonprofits, this is always the thing where we have zero money and all these ideas, and we have like the most brilliant people in the world working for us. But, learning how to really distill what it is that you're doing, and going back to that foundation of, this is my mission, these are my values, this is my goal, these are my goals, and this is how I'm going to do that. Anything outside of that, just, it's gone. Someone else can do it.